Ah, poor Apple. Don't you just feel sorry for them? Joining us now here on Newsmax Now is Sarah Westwood. She's an investigative reporter for the Washington Examiner. Thanks so much for joining us again.
Thanks for having me.
So let's talk about your new column. New documents show Justice Department linked to IRS scandal. Tell us a little bit about it.
Right. This adds a whole new layer to the IRS scandal because it shows that the Department of Justice, which was partly tasked with investigating the tax agency, was actually colluding with some big name people at the IRS, including Lois Lerner, the former head of the agency's tax-exempt unit, to find ways to prosecute conservative groups who are engaging in political activity. That means that basically people involved in the scandal are investigating themselves, and it raises questions about the impartiality of the probe so far and perhaps why it hasn't really turned up any smoking gun evidence.
So what do you make of all this?
Well, it's troubling that not only were conservative groups scrutinized in extra amount when they were applying for tax-exempt status, which in itself is unfair, but that the IRS was potentially searching for loopholes to open criminal investigations into existing tax-exempt organizations is really troubling, especially when in one of the new documents that was released through the Freedom of Information Act, we're seeing that Lois Lerner even suggested changing the laws so that they would harm certain political groups, presumably conservative and Tea Party specifically organizations. And so that is very, very troubling that the IRS would go out of its way to try to prosecute groups that were engaging in free speech.
Now, Sarah, this scandal happened some time ago, and some people were really, cared a great deal about it. Others said, it will die off. Do you think that this will bring it back into light?
It certainly raises new questions and opens new avenues for investigations because now we have a whole new list of names and a whole new set of documents and line of inquiry that Congress can take up as they continue this probe. But you're right that this took place a long time ago. This was 2010 timeframe. We didn't learn about it until 2013, but even so, this has been hanging out there for 2 years, and there's less of an appetite in Congress and among the public to keep going after the IRS with as much vigor as they did when they first opened this investigation.
Do you think that this will prompt another investigation?
That's difficult to say because you don't see new revelations in the IRS scandal pick up that much traction. For example, a couple weeks ago, we learned that someone at the IRS magnetically erased thousands of backup tapes that held Lois Lerner's emails so that we'll never get to see what she was discussing while she was still running the nonprofit wing of the IRS. And yet you don't see that raising the calls to continue this investigation in the way that it would have if that had come out when the investigation first began in 2013.
Sarah, what's your prediction? How is this going to unfold?
Well, soon the Inspector General, the watchdog of the IRS, will release its report on the emails from Lois Lerner that it was able to pull off of recovery tapes of the backup hard drive that Lois Lerner said had crashed. And so those will perhaps provide some new insight into what leaders at the IRS were thinking when they were scrutinizing Tea Party groups. But short of a smoking gun document, it's difficult to continue grasping at straws, so to speak, even though this is an incredibly important issue. But we may see this die down as the 2016 election heats up and people start turning their focus to other things like the Hillary Clinton scandals, and this sort of fades away without answers.
Sarah Westwood, investigative reporter for the Washington Examiner, thank you so much for sharing your article with us. And Sarah will rejoin us again, as well as Liz Peek. That's all coming up next in our Newsmax Now Roundtable. Stay tuned.